So, it is one of the hottest mornings of the year. If you stepped outside my door right now, the air on the street would press against you like a warm hand. The cicadas are already loud in the trees, and by noon the pavement will be hot enough to feel through the soles of your shoes. And yet I am standing just inside my doorway with a wooden ladle and a shallow basin of water, and I am pouring that water slowly across the stone step and the ground in front of my house. The stone darkens, a little steam rises, and the air right here where I am standing is noticeably cooler than the air 10 steps away on the street. Inside my house, no machine is running. There is no hum from a box in the window, no vent blowing cold air, no meter spinning faster because of the heat. It is going to be a brutal day, and I have not turned on an air conditioner. I have not turned one on in this house in years. My name is Kenji Tanaka. I am 68 years old, and my wife Yuki and I have lived in the same small home for 38 years, through 38 of the hot, heavy summers this country is known for. And we are comfortable through all of them, without a machine, not because I have found some secret device, and not because I am tougher than you are. It is because, a long time ago, before I was old enough to understand it, I learned something from my grandmother that most of the world has quietly forgotten. She taught me that you do not fight the heat. You cannot win that fight, and every machine that tries costs you money for the privilege of losing slowly. What you do instead is far simpler. You work with the day, and by the time I am finished, you are going to understand the one mistake that makes nearly every air conditioner on Earth work twice as hard as it should, and the handful of small things I do instead, which cost almost nothing and use no electricity at all. Let me start with that mistake because everything else follows from it. Most people believe that a hothouse is caused by a hot day. It seems obvious. It is warm outside, therefore it becomes warm inside, and there is nothing to be done but fight the warmth once it arrives. But that is not quite true. And the small gap between what is true and what people believe is the whole secret. A house does not simply soak up the temperature of the air around it. A house becomes hot mostly because of sunlight, direct sunlight, pouring through the glass of your windows and striking the walls, the floors, the furniture inside, where it turns into heat and is trapped. The air outside matters, but the sun coming through the glass matters far more. And here is the part that undoes almost everyone. Once that sunlight has passed through the window, the heat is already inside your house. It is already done. And from that moment on, everything you do, the machine in the window, the fan, the cold air, is an attempt to remove a heat you already allowed in. You are mopping the floor while the faucet is still running. You are fighting the battle in the one place it can no longer be won. So the entire Japanese way of cooling a home, the way my grandmother knew and her grandmother before her, begins from the opposite direction. You do not fight the heat inside. You stop it outside, before it ever becomes heat, and you cool the air that does reach you gently with the two oldest tools there are, which are water and the night. Let me show you exactly how, and I am going to walk you through it the way the day itself unfolds, from the morning to the dark, because that is how it is actually lived. It is not a gadget, it is a rhythm. It begins where you found me, at dawn, with the water on the stone. We have a name for this. We call it uchimizu, and it is a very old practice, hundreds of years old, something people once did every summer morning in front of their homes and shops as naturally as sweeping the step. You take a little water and you scatter it across the ground, the stone, the path, the earth around the house. And as that thin film of water evaporates in the warm air, it does something quietly remarkable. To turn from water into vapor, it must draw heat out of everything around it, out of the stone and out of the air itself. It pulls the heat away and carries it up into the sky, and it leaves the ground and the air a few degrees cooler than they were. Not dramatically. I want to be honest with you, this is not a machine. It will not turn a hot street into a cold one, but it takes the sharpest edge off the heat right where you live and breathe, and it cools the very air that is about to drift in through your windows. There is one rule with Uchimizu that matters more than any other, and if you get it wrong, the whole thing is useless. You do it in the cool of the morning or in the evening and in the shade, never in the blazing middle of the day. I know that feels backward. When it is hottest, at 2 in the afternoon, that is when you want to throw water everywhere. But in that fierce midday sun, the water simply flashes away in minutes before it can do its slow cooling work, and you have gained nothing but a wet path. In the morning, and again as the sun goes down, the water lingers, it evaporates slowly, and it cools the air for a good while. My grandmother did it at dawn and again at dusk, 2 quiet moments that bracketed the heat of the day, and I do the same. It costs nothing. A basin of water and a minute of your time. Now the sun begins to climb, and this is where the real work of keeping a house cool is done, and where nearly everyone in the modern world makes their mistake. Remember what I told you, the heat gets in through the glass. So the answer, the whole answer, is that you must stop the sunlight before it reaches the glass, on the outside of the window, out in the open air, not inside your room. This is the single most important thing I can tell you, so let me be very clear about it. If you close a curtain or lower a blind on the inside of your window, you have already lost. The sunlight has passed through the glass, it has struck your curtain, it has become heat, and now that heat is inside the room with you, trapped against the window, warming your house. An indoor curtain does almost nothing against the sun. It is far, far too late by the time the sun reaches it. What we use instead is a screen made of thin reed or bamboo, and we hang it or lean it on the outside of the window, out in the open air. We call these sudare when they hang and yoshizu when they lean, but the name does not matter. What matters is that the shade is happening outside, where it belongs, catching the sunlight before it ever touches the glass. The heat is stopped out there, in the open, where it can drift away on the breeze instead of being trapped in your room. And reed is a wonderful material for this, better than a metal shutter, because reed does not soak up and hold the heat the way metal does, and because the small gaps between the reeds still let the air move through and still let a soft, filtered light into the room, so you are shaded but not sitting in the dark. A house behind reed screens on a hot day is one of the most pleasant places I know. The light is gentle and green gold, the air moves, and the fierce sun is simply held outside where it cannot reach you. And there is a second kind of screen I love even more, because it is alive. Along the sunniest wall of our house, the west wall that takes the worst of the afternoon sun, Yuki grows a curtain of green. Every spring she plants a climbing vine at the base of the wall, most often Goya, the bitter gourd, though a flowering vine like Morning Glory works too, and she trains it up a net stretched from the ground to the eaves, and by the deep of summer that whole wall is a living green wall of broad leaves. We call it a green curtain, and it is the most beautiful cooling tool I know, because it does 3 things at once. The leaves block the sun from the wall and the window, throwing the whole side of the house into cool shade, cutting away the great majority of the sun's heat before it can arrive. And like the water on the stone at dawn, the plant is quietly releasing moisture from its leaves all day long, and that evaporation cools the air right against the house. And at the end of it all, when summer fades, the Goya has given us fruit to eat, shade, cool air, and food, from a packet of seeds and a net. The wall behind that green curtain stays cool to the touch on a day when the bare wall beside it is too hot to hold your hand against. I should admit, the kind of man who wanted to see the numbers for himself. I did not simply take my grandmother's word for any of this, warm as her word was. Some years ago, I bought a small thermometer, the ordinary inexpensive kind, and over a few summers I made a quiet habit of measuring, because I wanted to know whether what I had always done was truly doing anything, or whether I only believed it was. I would lay the thermometer on the bare stone of the step in the late morning and note the number, then pour the water across the stone and lay it down again a little later and watch the reading fall by a couple of degrees. I held it against the west wall in the full afternoon sun, and then against the same wall a step away where the green curtain shaded it, and the difference there was not small at all. It was the difference between a surface too hot to keep my hand against and one that was merely warm. I checked the upstairs room on a summer morning after a night with the windows flung wide, and again on a morning I had left them shut, and the room that had breathed the night air was cooler by several degrees, and stayed cooler for hours. I tell you this not because the numbers are large, because they are not, and I will never pretend to you that they are. I tell you because they are real, and because I would rather hand you a small true number than a large false one. Everything I am about to keep describing, I have watched happen on a thermometer held in my own hand. So the sun is held outside now, by the reed and by the green. But a house also needs to breathe, and this is the last piece of the system, and it carries you from the heat of the day into the cool of the night. Through the day, you want the air to move, because moving air feels cooler on the skin even when it is the same temperature, and because it carries warmth out of the house instead of letting it pool. The trick is not to open one window, but to open windows on opposite sides of the house so that the air is drawn all the way through in one side and out the other, a true current rather than a stale room with a single gap. And you draw it in from the coolest side you have, the shaded side, the side with the green curtain and the reed screens, where the air is already cooler, and you let it flow through and out the far side. My grandmother's house was built for exactly this, to let the summer breeze pass straight through it, and even a modern home can be opened this way with a little thought about which windows face each other. And then, at night, comes the simplest and most powerful habit of all, the one that costs nothing and that almost everyone does exactly backward. When the sun goes down and the outside air finally turns cool, you open your house wide. You open the windows on both sides, and you let that cool night air pour through and flush out all the heat the day left behind, all the warmth soaked into your walls and floors. You let the house empty itself of the day, and then, early in the morning, before the sun has any real strength, you close it all up again, windows and screens, and you trap that cool night air inside, sealing it in like water in a cupped hand. A house closed against the morning heat, full of the cool of the night, stays comfortable for hours into the day. Most people do the opposite. They shut the house at night when it is cool outside and fling it open in the afternoon when it is hot, letting the heat in and the cool out, and then they wonder why they need a machine. The night air is free, everywhere in the world, and it is one of the greatest cooling tools you will ever have. You need only use it in the right direction. Now, I have to be honest with you about the limits of all this, because I would rather be useful to you than impressive, and there is a difference. They will tell you, all over the internet, that a bucket of water will make your house cold like a machine. It will not, and I will not pretend to you that it will. The water, the uchimizu, and the evaporation from the green leaves do their best work in dry air and in the shade. On a still, heavy, humid afternoon, when the air is already thick with moisture, evaporation slows down, and water can do less for you. That is simply the truth of it. But notice that the two strongest parts of this system do not depend on dry air at all. The reed screen and the green curtain block the sun no matter the weather, in any climate, humid or dry, and stopping the sun is most of the whole battle. And the cool of the night is free everywhere on earth. So even on the worst, muggiest days, the sun is held outside, the heat is flushed at night, and the water adds what it can when it can. Put it all together, and the point is not that I make a hot house cold. The point is that my house never becomes hot in the first place. That is a different thing, and a better one. That is the entire system, and you will notice there is nothing in it to buy from anyone, nothing to install, nothing to plug in, a basin of water, a screen of reed, a vine and a net, windows opened in the right order at the right time, and I think that is worth pausing on, because it raises a question I have thought about for many years. If this works so well, and costs so little, why did nearly everyone forget it? And I want to be careful here, because you will hear people say that this knowledge was hidden from you on purpose, that some company buried it to sell you machines. I do not believe that, and I will not tell you a story I do not believe. The truth is gentler and in a way sadder. No one hid this. When the machine arrived, we simply stopped. We traded a practice for a product. The machine was easier, it asked nothing of us, no ladle at dawn, no screens to hang, no vine to tend. And so within a single generation we let the old ways fall out of our hands, here in Japan as much as anywhere. And a practice that costs nothing, has no one to advertise it, no salesman, no billboard, so once it was forgotten, there was nothing to remind us. It was not taken from you, it was set down and left behind. But a thing that is only set down can always be picked back up. If you would like the whole of it, not only how we keep this house cool in summer, but how the same small home stays warm through winter without any central heat, and every other habit that runs a home this way through the year, I have written it all down. It is on my website, and the link is just below this video. That is all I will say about it. I will not mention it again, because the last thing I want to leave you with is not a technique at all. It is a way of seeing. The machine cools an empty box. It roars away all day, chilling rooms that no one is sitting in, fighting the entire outdoors to force one sealed house to be cold. That is an enormous amount of effort and money spent fighting nature directly, head on, and nature does not lose those fights cheaply. What my grandmother understood, and what I am really trying to give you, is the opposite instinct. You do not fight the day. You read it. You take the cool the morning offers, and you keep it. You take the shade the reed and the leaf can give, and you use it. You take the free cold of the night, and you carry it into the afternoon. You are not overpowering the summer. You are moving through it gracefully, the way you would move through a crowded room, not shoving but flowing. And a home cooled that way has a quality that no machine can give it, a stillness, a quiet, a feeling of being in agreement with the weather, instead of at war with it. So let me ask you, and I read every comment that comes to me. Tell me where you live, and what your summers are like. Tell me if your air is dry or heavy and humid, because it matters. And I will be honest with you about which of these things will serve you well and which will do less where you are. I have no interest in telling you that all of it works everywhere. I want to know your weather, so I can tell you the truth about your own house. Next time, I am going to turn the whole of this around, because the same house you have just watched me keep cool through the worst of summer is the house I keep warm through the depth of winter. And I do that without central heating too. I am going to show you the low table and the single quilt that can warm a whole family for pennies, the paper screens that hold a room's warmth in, and the reason a Japanese winter, which is colder than most people imagine, was survived for centuries with almost no fuel at all. When I show you how little it takes, I think you will look at your heating bill the way you are about to look at your cooling one. Until then, remember this. The cool was never something I had to make. It was something the day was already offering, if only I stopped shutting it out.